Okay, so I think we can slowly get going. First of all, welcome everyone. Very nice to have you. My name is Philippos Louis. I am the coordinator together with Georgia Panayotou uh, from the Department of Psychology. I'm at the Department of Economics at the University of Cyprus, and we are coordinating the Masters in Behavioral Economics. And we are organizing this fireside chat today with Dr. Andreas Aristeidou. Uh, Hello, Andrea, and thank you very much for being here. Um, so very briefly, before we get going, just to say to everyone, this will be a very informal chat, mainly between myself and Andreas, but you're all very welcome to, if you have some questions, to write them in the chat, and maybe then I can pass them along to Andreas. And at the end, so we will chat for maybe about 45 minutes, and at the end, hopefully we will have also some time to address some questions or that you will have to Andreas. Let me all tell you, Andreas is in California right now, so he also has to go to work after this. So, but he has kindly offered some of his time. So let me briefly say why we're doing this event. Like I said, we are having this Masters in Behavioral Economics, and often we have a question from students. Okay, so what will I do if I become a behavioral economist? What am I going to do? And there are many answers many ways one can answer this question, and I think they will all be correct because I think behavioral economists can do many things. But we thought, okay, let's try to give one answer, which maybe people, it's not the first thing people are thinking of when they hear about behavioral economics, which is what do people do? Can behavioral economists work, say, in tech industry, in a company like Netflix? And I think the answer is simple, as Andreas uh, 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 says in the back there, but I think it's best to hear it from himself. So, Andrea, thank you very much for being with us. It's great to have you. And yeah, why don't you introduce yourself to us, to the people, to know you better?
Yeah, well, it's very nice to be with you, Felipe. Thanks for the invitation. Well, my name is Andreas. I'm a data scientist currently at Netflix, but deep down, even though I'm called a data scientist, deep down I'm a behavioral economist. I started my journey in behavioral economics many years ago, and now, seeing the University of Cyprus offering a master's in behavioral economics is very exciting for me personally. And yeah, very excited to be here and just give some insight on how behavioral economics is really just taking over tech and many other industries as well.
Great. By the way, you mentioned you got excited about the University of Cyprus having this masters. Maybe we should let the audience know you are Cypriot yourself, right?
Yes, I am from Cyprus, from Nicosia in particular. I did my undergrad at the University of Nottingham.
Just
In
as you grew up in Cyprus, right? So
Yes, I grew up in Cyprus, was born in
okay.
Cyprus, born and raised, grew up, did my army service as many of us in Cyprus, and then began my journey studying abroad, UK, Spain, and then now in the US.
Nice. So what was your undergrad on? It was in economics?
My undergrad was in economics. Back then, I didn't know about the existence of behavioral economics. I remember back in the day, I was still in high school and I was deciding what I wanted to study, and I was deciding between economics and psychology. I ended up going with economics because I had never taken a psychology course before. Joined the University of Nottingham for a bachelor's in economics. Completely unknown to me that the University of Nottingham was one of the leading universities in behavioral economics. And that's where I got introduced to the field of behavioral economics. I remember seeing the class and I was like, whoa, that sounds very interesting. And one thing I will never forget is the first lecture I ever took in the first class, behavioral economics. at the end of the first lecture, I was just like mind blown. I was like, this is the most interesting thing that I've ever seen or heard in my life. And that's kind of where it all began.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. I was thinking because some of the people in our audience might actually not be really aware of what is behavioral economics, and maybe that's one of the reasons that they joined us, and maybe they're hoping to figure that out. So I think it's a good point maybe to kind of try to explain what is behavioral economics. And we have Department of Economics, Department of Psychology. How do these two come together? And so you all in this moment you're now in this class. Well, what the first class you took? What did they tell you?
Yeah, that's a great question. We should have started with that. So, behavioral economics, you can think of it as a blend of economics and psychology. It's more applying psychological insights to economic situations. So, traditional economics kind of like makes certain assumptions in order for economic models to work beautifully and nicely, and they oftentimes make good predictions, but oftentimes the predictions of economic models are not very accurate. And over the last, I don't know, 40, 50 years, there's a new field, behavioral economics, which has begun applying some principles from psychology into economic modeling to help increase the explanatory power and the prediction of economic models. So, for example, just a couple of examples. Economics assumes that people are rational. They will always be able to make the best decision for themselves given a set of alternatives. I think we all know that's not true,
Yeah.
at least not always. Um, Behavioral economics assumes that people have bounded rationality, like they can reason well, but within a certain bound. Also, people are affected by emotions. People are affected by other choices around them. They're affected by what other people are doing. So these are just, I mean, we can talk about this for forever, but these are just like a little bit of an explanation of what is behavioral economics. It's applying principles from psychology into economic thinking and economic modeling.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's also, I think that's very similar to what I'm explaining to my students of behavioral economics in the masters. And it's like, okay, economics had a very good model about, I mean, it had to start something. It's also not that economists were uh, kind of like ignorant or not understanding how people behave. It's just they needed a model, and they were not psychologists. That was not their main interest. So they said, okay, let's just think of what people should be doing, and they should be thinking as much as they can and thinking the best they can and trying to do that. So let's assume that people actually do that. And in some cases, it actually did describe reasonably well what people are doing, but then in many other cases, it didn't. And then what you just explained kind of helps us now come up with better models that better explain uh, actual people's behavior. So yeah. Uh, so what so what was this class like? The first class you had, behavioral economics. What came out of that?
Yeah, I remember a lot of that class. It was honestly a pivotal moment in my career and life in general. I remember some examples they were giving us. Things are just like classical examples in behavioral economics. Things like how some countries have, organ donation rates of, in the low teens. So like, 5 or 6% of people agree to donate their organs after they pass away, where some other countries have almost 100% of the
Mm,
population agrees to donate their organs, after they die. And the reason why that difference exists is because of the framing of the question.
mm,
In one case, when people are filling a questionnaire, they're asked, it's an opt-in question. Would you
mm,
like to donate your organs, when you pass away? Check the box if yes. In the other case, it's just framing the question as an opt-out question, which is check this box if you would not like to donate
mm,
organs. And just that slight kind of like nudge or reframing makes such a huge difference. I remember some other examples like in behavioral finance when it's shown that people tend to buy more stocks when on sunny days, because people tend to feel more positively about life when it's sunny outside, and so they have a slight bias, slight increased tendency to I guess take more risks, invest more
Okay.
in the stock market. So
That could
yeah, there's like this
explain a lot of behaviors here in sunny Cyprus then, probably.
exactly, yeah, maybe we should study that.
Yeah. So then I think you mentioned in a past discussion we had that after so you got to know behavioral economics there, and then you also had a chance to kind of try to apply these ideas in the real world. Your father helped you with that, or was kind of supportive. What was that about?
Yeah, I was lucky. I was learning about behavioral economics both from school, but also I was just reading every book I could find. I was completely obsessed with the field back then. And I remember my dad had a company with some physical stores where they would sell retail products. And I was lucky enough that my dad would indulge some of my of my experiments that I wanted to run to test some of those behavioral theories. I remember some things like one of the things that I was fascinated about is irrelevant alternatives. So traditional economic theory says that if you have two options and then you prefer A to B,
Hmm.
and then there's a third option, C, that is worse than both A and B, then C should not influence your decision between A and B. You should still choose A.
Hmm.
But we actually find from insights from psychology that sometimes irrelevant alternatives can make one of the two existing choices seem more attractive.
Mm.
And the reason for that is because oftentimes, most of the times, we don't value an item or a product based on purely the rational effect that it has on us, but we tend to value things based on how relatively more attractive or less attractive they appear relative to other products or offers
Alternatives.
or
Yeah.
services. And so I remember I used to play around with placing worse products next to the products that we wanted to sell and seeing the impact on the product that we wanted to sell. So for example, let's just say, this is a hypothetical example, um, a a pack of spaghetti
Uh-huh.
for $5, and then placing next to it a pack of half of that spaghetti for $4.90.
Yeah.
And that makes the first item now
Mm.
look relatively a lot more attractive as
Yeah.
an option.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I used to play around a lot with these
Uh,
behavioral principles and testing them in practice just for fun.
okay. Great. Well, and well, we'll move ahead, but kind of it was kind of foreshadowing probably maybe your career after that. So then, okay, so you finish in Nottingham. You play around a bit with your father's permission on what he will on his business. What followed after that?
So after that was master's in economics, economics / behavioral economics that I did in Barcelona, the University of Pompeu Fabra,
Hmm.
Barcelona School of Economics. So early in my bachelor's, after I got introduced to behavioral economics, and I began talking to professors, asking them to if I can help them with their research, participating in behavioral economics experiments. It was pretty clear to me that I wanted to pursue this field further um, by doing a PhD
Hmm.
and pursuing just further education. And so the next step in that was a master's that I got accepted to in Barcelona, as I mentioned, which had a lot of elements of more traditional economics and of a lot of elements of behavioral economics
Hmm.
as well. And then after that, when I applied to and got accepted to the University of Southern California here in Los Angeles, where I'm still am in 2015, which I came in with a very clear focus of specializing in behavioral economics.
Right. So then, and you could do proper experiments there as well in
Exactly.
during your PhD and your doctorate. Okay, so then uh, that's all great. But then, unlike, for example, me, I did my PhD and then I continued in this academic world. You actually decided to move away from that. Not that far away, but out of universities. How was that
Yeah.
like?
Yeah, not that far away. I like that framing. I don't feel like I'm that far away. Even I may not be writing academic papers, but I feel like I am still learning and applying behavioral
Yeah.
economics principles on a daily basis. Um, well, that had less to do with behavioral economics and more about the type of work that I wanted to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it is true that before coming to the US, I thought that the only thing I could do is either become a professor at a university or work at a government job,
Mm-hmm.
which was, what I thought that behavioral economists did. But after coming to the US, I realized that, behavioral economics and just my skills in general could be useful in the industry, in tech, and a lot of other places. So while doing my PhD, I began getting interested in other areas of economics like causal inference and then computer science.
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky enough to be connected with a professor. I think his name's Kevin Layton Brown, who is at
Yeah.
the University of Vancouver,
Mm-hmm.
who does research in the intersection of computer science and behavioral economics. And that opened up a whole new world of ideas for me of how we can amplify the impact of behavioral economics using more data science approaches. And so I then began getting more interested in algorithms, data science, machine learning, um, and all those things. So once I graduated from USC, University of Southern California, with my PhD in economics and the master's in computer science, which I pursued concurrently, I just began looking for data science slash behavioral science economics jobs. And I was also very lucky enough to get a great job right out of my PhD program at Zillow, which is a for those who don't know,
Yeah, that would be good to.
it's an online real estate company that lists it lists houses for sale. It helps renters find homes, and it used to back in the day also buy and sell homes as well.
Okay, so just for to clarify, I mean, first of all, funny, like, or maybe natural that the Cypriot ended up in real estate. Here in Cyprus, actually, we are all into construction, real estate, and these type of business. We kind of like that over here. Uh, so, but just to clarify, it's not just like Bazaraki or something like that, where you can just find ads for houses. It's a bit
No,
more than that.
no, it's more so the houses that are on Zillow, they come from a centralized kind of like pipeline. So they're basically almost all the houses that are for sale in the United States. In addition to that, if you go to the website Zillow.com, you'll see very detailed information about houses, not just pictures, but like years built, everything about the house, including history, tax history, and everything. Oftentimes there's 3D tours. But one of the big innovations that made Zillow a household name is that their proprietary like ML algorithm, which estimates the value of a house.
Okay. By the way, ML, just for anyone,
Machine
machine
learning.
learning. Yeah.
Machine learning that estimates value of homes. Now, I think a natural follow-up question is like, why would a real estate tech company need a behavioral economist?
I was about to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I, to be honest, was wondering the same. But it turns out that as I got to as I got to figure out for myself, there couldn't be a better fit for behavioral economics in tech and real estate as well. If you think about it, real estate, buying a house or selling a house is probably one of the biggest and most emotional
Hmm.
transactions
Yeah.
someone is going to make in their lifetime. As Felipe, you may know, and I
Yeah. Yeah.
know personally recently. Um, and people are not thinking rationally about this in many ways. And so using understanding people's behaviors, their motivations, and the emotions that are happening through the buying and selling process, it's so crucial to helping people make the right choices. And I have several examples of my work at Zillow that kind of like showcase how small differences, small changes that are born out of psychological insights made a pretty huge impact in how people behaved.
Yeah. So would you care sharing some of these examples? I think everyone would be
Yeah,
interested.
yeah. I one of my very first projects, it was back in the day when Zillow used to buy and sell homes. They no longer do that. But for a little bit of context, they had this model where you would fill out a questionnaire about your home, where it is, and some information, bedrooms, bathrooms, and all that stuff. And because of Zillow's proprietary algorithm, they would know approximately what the house is worth. And so they would send you an offer
Mm.
immediately without even seeing the house. So you could get an offer on your house within 24 hours. Um, and then you would accept or decline. If you accepted, it was a conditional acceptance. So if you accepted, then Zillow would send someone to the house to investigate the house, see, things that they
Make
couldn't see.
sure things are like you said they are. Yeah.
Exactly. So, for example, like what if there was like a hole in the wall
Yeah.
that you would have to then take account of that. So then what happened is that once someone came in and inspected the house, then Zillow would revise their offer. They would say, okay, we gave you an offer for $1 million. We found repairs worth $50,000. So we are adjusting our offer to $950,000.
Hmm.
Now, what I found in my research is that people are obviously very emotional and very attached to their houses. So,
Mm.
and they're not expecting those repairs to come in. And so
Mm.
when you come and tell them, hey, your house is not good enough, it needs to be
Hmm.
repaired, it drew a very negative reaction from them. And that caused them to irrationally decline the offer, the
Really.
second offer, even if it was
Yeah.
a good offer.
Mm.
And so I was thinking about which behavioral economics principles fit here. And the intervention that I tested included a combination of anchoring and kind of like reference point shift.
Hmm.
So what I realized is that people were not expecting to receive a repairs bill at all. And so their reference point was at zero. So whatever the repairs were, it was like a huge negative reaction
Yeah.
towards that. And so I made this tiny, tiny change. Before giving them the repairs bill, I just asked them a question. How much do you expect repairs to be on your house?
Mm.
That's it. Because the only thing I was trying to achieve here is to make them think about their house more rationally. I wanted them to think, oh, repairs. Oh, yeah, it's true that that wall needs to be repainted. Oh, yeah, there was a broken glass here. Just to bring the reference point a little bit higher from zero.
Hmm.
So long story short, with that question, we saw almost 30% higher acceptance
Wow.
of the final offer. That was maybe the most impactful experiment I've ever done because in real life, at the scale of the United States and Zillow, that translated to millions of dollars of
Yeah.
extra sales.
Wow.
That's just one example of like how a tiny intervention that only someone with a behavioral economics background could think about made
Yeah.
such a huge difference.
Wow. That's quite impressive. I mean, I'm sure they were very happy to have hired
They
you.
were very happy. Yeah, they were very happy.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so I don't know. Do you have any other example? I mean, from Zillow or
I have
before we
I
move
have a
on?
couple of more examples, but please stop me for time purposes. I can talk about this forever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's. I mean, maybe let's slowly move ahead, and then maybe you can always come back, because I mean,
Sounds good.
we kind of use some behavioral economics for marketing purposes and convince everyone that you will be just talking about Netflix and whether the Maestro, the fourth season of Maestro, will come out on Netflix or not. So let's talk about Netflix, right? So after
Let's talk about
Zillow, that
Netflix.
was your next job, which is your current job. So what was that like?
Zillow or
Sorry,
Netflix?
Netflix, Netflix.
Netflix, yeah, yeah. So about a year and a half ago, I think I'm coming up to 2 years, I joined Netflix
Mm-hmm.
as my title is senior data scientist. But at the end of the day, what matters is, how you apply your knowledge and your skills. And I find that even though I'm not technically a behavioral economist, in my role, I apply behavioral economics principles all the time in my role.
Mm-hmm.
For example, last month, I was working on a project where I was trying to get people who receive surveys from Netflix
Uh-huh.
to respond to to the surveys more.
Mm.
Uh, well, how do you do that? That was a perfect example of applying behavioral economics, and we designed several different conditions where we the subject line and the body of the message, we kind of like redesigned it to make it sound more like, we added social proof that, hey, others are responding and giving their voice, so make sure your voice is heard. um, we added a lot of like sunk cost effects. So like, you're already here. Let us know what you think and make an impact, and just several other conditions that I cannot talk about too much. But
Yeah.
that's one example of behavioral economics where it really amplifies the impact that in a company, because the more people that respond to our surveys, the more accurate insights we can get and improve our products. Now, in
Yeah.
the actual user experience itself, so when you open Netflix on your TV, um, there's so much behavioral science or behavioral economics happening. So for example, one thing that has been working on for a few years is reducing choice overload. So choice overload is
Mm.
one of the most important concepts of behavioral economics, where it's shown that this contradicts standard economics. In standard economics, it would tell you that the more choices someone has, the better,
Yeah.
because they can choose the best out of a larger set of options. But insights from psychology and behavioral economics tell us that oftentimes when we're faced with a lot of choices, we get this thing called choice paralysis or choice overload,
Mm.
where we have too many things to evaluate, and in the end, we choose nothing because we're too overwhelmed. And you can see how that applies to Netflix, right? You open your Netflix, you
Absolutely.
see like there's like hundreds and thousands of options there.
Yeah.
And so how do we help people choose something that is good for them, or one of the best choices for them, without having them scroll through hundreds and thousands of
Yeah.
titles? That's something that we're
Because there's
actively
also there's
working
a
on.
trade-off, right? Like, you also don't want to limit their options. You don't want them to complain that it's so hard to find the movie or the series or something interesting, but you also don't want to unconsciously discourage them from actually using your service. I mean, that's something happening to me sometimes. I'm on Netflix or some similar platform. What should I see? I spend half an hour and then I'm like, okay, I'm already too tired. Let me just go to
Yeah,
bed and not watch anything. Uh,
that happens to me too. That happens to
yeah.
me too sometimes. And yeah, it is something that we're working on. And these some solutions that are working on are having like bigger thumbnails
Mm,
for titles that we think are going to be more you're going to more likely to be interested in, and then smaller thumbnails for other titles. Also, if you log into Netflix, you'll see categories such,
yeah.
for example, like trending, or
Mm,
top 10 this week, or for you,
yeah.
uh, or things like, there's a principle called um, what's implementation intentions, which
Okay.
states that, if you state an intent to do something, then you're more likely to actually do it. And that
Hmm.
applies to when you add a movie or a series on your list to watch, and then
Hmm.
that list is shown to you, that makes you then more likely to actually go ahead and watch what you said you would watch because of
Yeah.
the fact that we provided that opportunity for you to save it on my list.
Right.
All
Right.
of these things are born out of knowledge of human psychology, human decision making, and
Hmm.
behavioral science.
So let me be a bit more provocative now, because
Good.
some people may hear these things and think like, okay, but that's at the end, that's just kind of manipulation. You're using all this knowledge uh, you gain from psychologists and behavioral economists to just manipulate and make more profits out of your clients. So it's kind of like marketing, but kind of supercharged in some sense, kind of marketing from within our brain. So oh, is it just that? Is it just manipulating people? Like, do companies use behavioral economics just to manipulate people and make more profit? And kind of connected to that, when I run experiments, for example, or my students even, they even want to run a survey. They have to go ask for permission by the National Bioethics Committee, whatever. So there's a lot of attention to that. I mean, in companies, you don't really need to do that. Usually, I guess you don't need to ask for informed consent. So are there any other uh, forces that kind of regulate you? Are you self-regulated? How does that work? So two questions kind of put into one.
No, that's a great question, and I appreciate you bringing that up. So, first of all, I would say this question, I think, applies to a lot of things, not just behavioral economics,
Yeah.
but how you use something. It is you can use it for good or for bad. In companies, well, the hard regulation is that you cannot do something that is illegal. All right. So, for example, at Zillow, we were limited oftentimes with things we wanted to play with. For example, we couldn't change the listing price of a home. That would be
Mm,
illegal. But that's one side of the things. Now, in terms of how you actually implement it within the legal framework, I think it's up to the company and to the practitioner to be self-aware and to just make sure that you're applying your principles. So here's a good rule of thumb that I use. It's not a bulletproof rule, but it's a good starting point to think about when you're designing behavioral interventions. So think about this. Is the intervention or the nudge that I'm applying making people make more informed choices? Or let's reframe this. Is the intervention that I am proposing making people choose an option or take an action that is closest to their preferences, to their true preferences?
mm,
So if your intervention is making people choose something that they may not have chosen otherwise, that aligns better with their true preferences, then I think that's a good rule of thumb that your intervention, your application of behavioral economics is not unethical.
yeah,
Again,
I
not
think it.
foolproof, but that's just a good way to think about it.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, like at the end, companies want to also have to, you want to sell something to someone that actually wants to buy it. So, you can sell something to someone that doesn't want it once, but then that can't be your
Exactly.
long-term strategy.
That's a great example of also at Netflix, right? We want people to watch more content, but we want people to watch content that they will like.
Yeah,
We don't
right.
want to manipulate people in starting movies and shows that they will not end up liking it. That would be bad
Mm,
for them. That would be bad for us too.
yeah, great. Right. So let me move to something else. Like you're also now you're senior data scientist, so you probably also now have to kind of you're involved in hiring as well, leading teams of people, and you're a senior data scientist. So I guess your teams are kind of probably a mix of data scientists, data analysts, other behavioral economists, maybe. So, what would you say is like, what's the value that the behavioral economist brings into a team like that? And how is that viewed by by the others, the engineers, data scientists, and the company itself? Do they see a value? Do they recognize it?
So surprisingly to me as well, to be honest, the answer is that yes, behavioral economics thinking is very much valued. When I say surprising, because I had similar doubts before I joined,
Mm-hmm.
both Zillow and Netflix. Um, but then a lot of people will say, or what I heard is that, well, now we have A/B testing. We can just A/B test everything. We don't need theory.
Just to clear that up for people that don't know, A/B testing is the idea you make a button, you make it red or you make it green, and then you see whether people click more on it when it's red or when it is green, kind of to make it a very simplistic example,
Yeah,
right?
just running experiments, just like
Mm-hmm.
changing the UI from one to the other and seeing which one has a bigger impact on your metrics. Um, so, but then if you think about it, there's like an unlimited ways in which you can change something or new products you can introduce.
Mm-hmm.
How do you choose which ones to prioritize? That's one way in which behavioral economics and insights from psychology comes into place. At Zillow, I remember before testing anything, we had to explain using behavioral economics theories and principles why we believed that change might have an effect. And in full transparency, many of the changes that we tested did not have an effect, but some of them who did, as I mentioned earlier, could have like
Yeah.
an effect in the range of like millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could test without behavioral insights from behavioral decision making. You could test 100 things and expect to get one of them to work. Using having knowledge of behavioral decision making, you can test 5 things and expect two to work.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the ways in which behavioral economics helps these companies is by helping them be more targeted in terms of what they test, and also help them understand why some behaviors may be happening in the platform that may be hard to explain. So explanatory power comes with behavioral economics. Because with more traditional data science, in the more traditional ML modeling and causal inference, you can get really good at identifying, for example, what causes what and what impacts what. But to get inside of that and understand why a factor influences another, or why maybe it may influence both factors, or like partially influence something, that's where also behavioral economics comes in to help you have a more structured framework to think about why something that you're observing is happening, and then design very targeted interventions on how
Mm-hmm.
to shift or shape the behavior um, of your users or your customers.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And how do you, I mean, also right now, the tech industry is, I mean, going through one might even call it a revolution, right? We have generative AI and AI more generally, uh, changing a lot of the things, how things are done and how we see technology and people's interaction with technology. How does that affect, uh, the industry, and how does that affect in particular the role of behavioral economists in the tech industry?
That's another great question. Gen AI is, yeah, indeed taking over, not taking over, but like it is increasingly being implemented in in day-to-day work and life. Um, but Gen AI so far has made me even more confident about the value and the longevity of behavioral economics. Let me explain. So generative AI, at least at this current state, we don't know how crazy things are going to get in the future. But at the current state, because I use Gen AI on a daily basis, Gen AI is extremely good at coding. it is extremely good at basic statistical analysis. It is extremely good at even implementing and running some machine learning models, identifying the types of distributions that you're seeing in your data. So a lot of the standalone data science skills are actually where Gen AI is actually very good at, and
Mm,
in many times beginning to replace.
mm,
Now, what Gen AI is not very good at, again, at least yet,
yeah.
we can never know how how crazy things will get in the future. But what it's still not great at is getting into the weeds and understanding how human decision making will happen or how it will be implemented in specific scenarios. Of
Mm,
course, it has, Gen AI has access to all kinds of like behavioral science and behavioral economics research that has happened so far, but it is still not very good at understanding or predicting how certain people or certain groups of people might behave differently in certain situations that they may be faced. And
yeah.
that, in my mind, further increases the value of someone with a deep understanding of
Mm,
decision making.
right.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. So, what would be uh, your advice? Or maybe actually, before going to that, I don't know if you're aware. Probably are. Maybe in Cyprus, there's also tech. The technology sector in Cyprus is growing quite a bit. I just brought up some numbers here. It seems like it went from the ICT, so information and communication technology sector went from 7% of GDP in 2019 up to 13% in 2022.
Wow.
So and it's still rising. So it's a growing sector here. You have a lot of fintechs, online games is also a big thing, and many other tech businesses here. So it's a developing industry here. So yeah, let me bring that together. What would be your advice for a young Cypriot or non-Cypriot that related to that that was thinking of studying behavioral economics? Well, how should they or work in behavioral economics in this sector? How should they move ahead?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I did know about the growing tech sector in Cyprus, which is very exciting. I didn't know how big it was.
Yeah.
I'm surprised about the stats. So, um, well, what I would say is, so given my experience, I think tech is a perfect application of behavioral economics. I know that I totally understand that we tend to think of behavioral economics as applied in government or policy, but my experience has mostly been in tech, and I think it's only the impact is only growing, especially as the landscape is getting more and more and more competitive. Even a tiny nudge, a tiny advantage could give a tech company an edge over its competitors. Now, one thing I wanted to say is, I mean, don't get stuck in data science or behavioral economics or
Mm,
more traditional economics. Just get the skills and apply them in whatever context. Like, don't wait for a company to have a
mm,
title. We're hiring for a behavioral economist. You
no,
you don't need that. What you need is the knowledge and the skills, and then you go apply them in whatever context. Then you can become product manager. You can become business person. You can become a data scientist, an analyst with the
mm,
with the knowledge and the skills of a behavioral economist, which will then help you amplify your impact once you're in the company. The other thing is, honestly, just take risks. Go talk to those companies and just share your thoughts of how behavioral economics can be applied to their job. Like you mentioned, gaming and fintech.
mm,
They're two of the most perfect applications for behavioral economics. In games, I used to play a lot of online games. There's so much behavioral elements. There's two-sided marketplaces. There's ways to get people playing more, or there's ways to nudges to help to get people to take a break from their games and increase engagement. In fintech, behavioral finance, there's so many applications on
Yeah.
like helping people make better informed decisions about their finances. So there's like an endless application of behavioral economics in tech. Some companies may know it, some companies may not, but regardless, once you have that skill and that expertise, then any job you get, you'll be able to apply that expertise in whichever role you have.
Right. Oh, makes a lot of sense. I agree. It's good to hear it from you, because when we say it to students, sometimes they think like, okay, yeah, you just want to get us into your master's program or whatever. But it's great to hear, from someone in that sector, that there are so many applications of behavioral economics in that sector as well as others. I mean, like you mentioned, government and other places. Right. So I think time has passed actually quite fast. I haven't really realized. So if you still have some time, I just wanted to ask people in the audience. They have stuck around these 45 minutes. So is there anyone that would like to maybe ask a question to Andreas? I think he would be happy to hear from you. So if there's anyone, either raise your hand or just unmute your microphone and go ahead and ask. I don't see anything. Maybe a nudge or something would help here.
Behavioral man, yes.
Yeah, we need something to push him. Well, anyway, if no one has any other question, let me just also kind of recap. I think it was first great to hear of your journey and how that went. Now, not everyone will have the courage and the patience to go through the long journey of doing a PhD like you did. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you don't need to get a PhD in behavioral economics to be a behavioral economist. And we saw, you gave some examples, some great examples of how behavioral economists can add value to companies, whether it's your father's business selling retail products, or it's a big tech company selling houses, selling entertainment and content, or whatever that may be. Oh, we do have a question. So, okay, Shana, if you cannot unmute yourself, just if you want to type it into the chat, and we can pose a question to Andreas.
I wonder if there's like permissions, muting permissions.
Oh, could be the case? Right. So here's a question. How would you suggest convincing businesses to begin collecting data?
Yeah, great question. So I would say, honestly, if you have a good idea, there's no loss in contacting business directly, whether if it's a small business, the business owner, or if a larger business, the HR department, trying to set up a meeting with them and just present them with a proposal that is backed by some evidence. So there's so much, it's hard to kind of like reinvent the wheel. Like you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's so much evidence of behavioral interventions already that have happened in the past, both in academic literature and in the private sector. A lot of these big tech companies maintain blogs, which they kind of like document a lot of the research that they do. So you could collect a list of, I don't know, for example, say you wanna convince a company that making this change and collecting data to support this would help them. Then you can create a proposal, add a bunch of references on like, hey, this has been implemented by X company, or there's academic research which shows that this could help boost your sales or your revenue or the trust that your customers have in you by whatever X%. I think this could help, and offer yourself to help them do it or design it, and maybe that can get you a job there.
Great. Okay. So yeah, if is there any other question? Anyone else wants to ask something? In the interest of time as well, let me first of all let me promote also Andreas. I mean, I know he's very busy, but he's also very interested in so many different things, behavioral economics, data science, and beyond that. He was even blogging. He's quite active on LinkedIn, posting stuff related to these topics. Uh, he's been very helpful and expressed his interest, and hopefully will help us here at our masters as well at the University of Cyprus. I know he's still working, collaborating with his alma mater, the University of Southern California. So he's very generous, let's say like that, with his time. So I will just post here your website in the chat. So in case people want to have a look more into your profile and maybe get in touch with you if they have anything they want to ask you.
I would say probably a better place to find me is LinkedIn. That's
Right.
probably a better place to find me. And on LinkedIn, I have a link where you can just set up some time to talk to me. So feel free
That's
to use.
amazing. That's great. So great. Let me also make a small promotion of our masters. So if anyone got excited by what they heard from Andreas and feels like, okay, that's a thing for me, I want to do like that. Well, our masters is a good place to start. So we are now receiving applications. So it's the application period, submission. You can submit your application. The final deadline is the 31st of March, but there will be a first evaluation cutoff at the end of this month, 28th of February. So if you apply by then, you will find out sooner. There might be even some possibility. We have to see about that, depending on, if you're an excellent candidate, we might have some tuition waivers, partial or even full. So I mean, you can scan the QR code, which is here next to me, or let me also paste the link into the chat for that. And if you have any more questions related to the masses or more broadly behavioral economics, I'm also very happy to talk with you. So you can find me here at the university at our Department of Economics, the webpage there, or you can talk to Georgia Panayotou at the Department of Psychology. All that information is on on the website of the master's program. So yeah, we will be very happy to receive applications from you or your students if you have students. And yeah, I really enjoyed our chat, Andrea. I hope our audience did so as well. Thank you very much. Any final words from you?
It was great being here. Thanks for the invitation. I would say give behavioral economics a shot. It is besides the usefulness in the industry, it's also extremely interesting, and you won't regret it.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day, Andrea, evening, people here in Cyprus, or, well, a nice rest of the day wherever you are. Follow us on LinkedIn. We're also we're also there, so maybe we'll have events like that in the future again, and you can hear about those. And yeah, it was great to have you all, and bye bye.